Welcome to the Dr. Diane Show, where we explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. With over 20 years of expertise as a mindset warrior, perspective shifter, and unshakable optimist, I am dedicated to helping you reach your wildest dreams in business, health, performance, and relationships. Learn about the power of thought and how it shapes your life to take risks, change careers, find love, go on adventures, and live passionately with me, Dr. Diane. Get ready for revolutionary ways of thinking, being, and creating an amazing life. The Dr. Diane Show starts now. Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Diane Hayden, and you are listening to the Dr. Diane Show on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, where we will explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul. Each time on the Dr. Diane Show, we have experts from around the country discussing cutting-edge topics on longevity medicine, natural health, mindset, and soul purpose to help you shift your perspective and become a mindset warrior like me. I'm excited today to have Alison Birks on the show with me. She is a certified nutrition specialist, a registered clinical herbalist, and a healing practitioner in the Andean Kasapuri tradition, and a certified grief educator. Alison has been in practice since 1997 and has studied and used herbs since age 13, when she received a calling from spirit. She studied botany and ecology at College of the Atlantic and later earned a master's degree in nutrition from the University of Bridgeport. She has completed certifications in therapeutic herbalism, Chinese herbalism, and aromatherapy. Alison has had extensive experience in herbalism, ranging from that of a gardener, educator, co-owner of an herbal apothecary, wild foods enthusiast, retail nutritionist, and instructor in higher education. She loves to grow, wild harvest, and make her own medicines, and she currently works remotely with clients, teaches for Charter Oak State College in Connecticut, and is a contributing writer, educator at the Herbal Academy. Alison is the author of the children's book, Lua the Llama and the Mountain of Joy, as well as numerous articles on herbal medicine and nutrition. So welcome, Alison. Thank you so much for being with us today. How are you?
Good. Hi, Diane. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Awesome. So you have got a pretty amazing background. I think that there's just so much to know about herbs that I feel like people are really going to get an awesome education today from the show with you. But I always like to start out by talking about, how you got into this. I mean, it sounds like from a very young age, you were interested in herbs, and that kind of started your path.
Yeah, I've always been a very spiritual person and a seeker. I always describe myself as a seeker looking for the truth. And, as a young child, I really developed kind of an intuition. And I had a number of different dreams and things that kind of led me to where I am today. And there was a time in my life, a very dark time, when I had some of my own health issues. And something just kind of spoke to me and said, herbs are the way, like that's the way. And I started having these experiences with I think of it as like genetic recall or genetic memory, because my great grandmother in Canada was an herbalist. And I remember discussing this with my grandmother, my mother's mother. And she said, "Oh yeah, your great grandmother was an herbalist and a midwife." And so I always believe that, I believe in reincarnation and that we come into this world with knowings. And so I feel that there was a knowing that came with me into this life. And, when I was 13, which is sort of a pivotal time in life, in terms of spiritual awakening for many people, I was given the knowledge that this was what I was to do. And
Wow.
so I didn't really know very many people at the time. I wasn't hooked into a community. I didn't know any other herbalists. All I had to go with were my mom's books. And she had, some of the classic naturopathy books, Jethro Kloss, and which was Back to Eden, and Bernard Jensen, and all the old naturopathic books. And I just devoured them from cover to cover. And I started going to the library and taking out, Maud Greaves' Herbal and Culpepper's Herbal and all these old books, and John Lust's Herbal. These were all books that I found available at the time, and self-studied for a long time. And, my mom was at the time, she was really into health food. And we belonged to a food co-op, which is now the Ion restaurant in Middletown. I don't know if you know the
Oh, yeah. Yep.
vegetarian
Yep.
restaurant. So we were members of the co-op way back when I was a kid. And we used to go, my mom would do her shift. And my best friend and I would kind of wander through the store, smelling all the herbs and looking at all the weird foods and things that we didn't see anywhere else. And so that was my introduction to nutrition and holistic health. And I was just fascinated with it. And I always had a deep connection with nature and with plants and with finding my own source in nature. Um, and as I said, I was a seeker, so I spent a lot of time outdoors as a child, climbing trees, playing in the woods, making my own concoctions out of dandelions and things like that. And when this light bulb went on for me, it was, it became a passion and it became an obsession. And I just started learning everything I could and experimenting. And my family were great because, they knew about my great great grandmother, and they were very willing guinea pigs. I was young, and they would come to me and say, I'd have uncles and aunts saying, oh, what do you have for this? And what do you have for that? And I would, follow some of the recipes in the books and make stuff, and they would try it.
That's amazing because I feel like so many people's families kind of shut them down, especially if we're talking about intuition. I can't tell you how many people have said to me, like, oh, I feel like I was really intuitive as a kid, or I saw things, or I heard things, but my parents didn't encourage that. And they kind of told me, like, oh, no, that's not, you must have, it must be your imaginary friend, or you must have dreamt it. So it's amazing that your family was really open to all of this and encouraging. And obviously it makes sense because, clearly on one side of your family, you had a great great grandmother who did this. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, and my mom, I have to give, special shout out for my mom that, she always never, she really never influenced me. She let me be who I was. She didn't try to
Mhm.
change me or stifle me. She accepted me for who I was and what I was to be. And it's funny, I remember, I think I was about 15 or 16, and one of my birthday gifts, she gave me an herbal book, and the inscription said, to Alison, for whatever it is you're meant to become.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm thinking
So
like the rest of us are reading like Flowers in the Attic or Nancy Drew or something, and here you are with all these herbal books. It's so cool.
yeah, no, I was way ahead of my time, because
Yeah.
I wasn't old enough to be part of that generation of herbalists that were sort of the trendsetters in this country. There's Rosemary Gladstar, and there's a lot of herbalists that are at least 20 years older than me, and they were kind of the forerunners. But I didn't know about that. I didn't know them. I didn't know anything about the community. It was very hard to find people, and I remember looking for that, like kind of looking for companionship. And the only person I could find in the area was Susan Weed, who lives in Woodstock, and she still teaches. And one of my earliest memories of connecting with other women was um, in one of her students. And it was like, yes, here are people doing the same kinds of things that I am. And, so I got very involved with like women's spirituality and drumming circles and sweat lodges and moon lodges and,
Hmm.
doing all of that kind of thing. And no one was doing what I was doing at my age. And my friends had no idea who I was. So it was a very interesting journey for me, but it was my passion and my heart, and I stuck to it, and over the years I've just grown and continued to add more and more things to what I do.
Yeah. And I mean, I think so many people are very curious about it. I mean, I know I am, and I know a lot about supplements, but I don't know that much about herbs. And I would imagine like a lot of people that are listening to this are, want to try things, but they're just not sure, how to go about it or what to do. So we're going to talk about using herbs in a lot of different arenas. And one of the things that, I noticed in your bio and just in us talking that you do that I think is very interesting is how you use herbs for grief. Because I think that, first of all, at this, in this particular time in the world with everything that's going on, I think a lot of people are struggling with a lot of trauma and grief. And it's not, just from a mental standpoint, it's not talked about that much and how, people can get help. But I bet that most people probably didn't even realize that you can use herbs for grief. Because when I saw that in your bio, I'm like, what? That is
Yeah.
fascinating to me.
Yeah, I mean, plants work on the whole person, not just on symptoms, not just on the physical. They work on the spiritual and the emotional as well. And there are herbs that are really traditionally used for, heartbreak or sadness or grief. And what's really interesting is that the newest research on grief shows that, there are physical effects of grief. And one of the things that can happen is it has a profound effect on the heart and on the cardiovascular system. And there's actually a condition where people can have what's similar to a heart attack through an intense emotional experience like loss. And it usually it's self-resolving, but it can feel the same, and it can feel as if you're having a heart attack. So there are herbs, for example, rose is one of my favorite herbs. The rose is traditionally used for helping to strengthen the heart and to open the heart and to ease grief and make you feel less sad. And so using an elixir or a tea of rose petals or a bath with roses, these types of things can be very helpful. And also what's really interesting is that there are flavonoids and other components in rose petals that strengthen the physical heart. So, there's not just one thing going on with herbs. We have the physical aspect and chemically what's going on, but then we also have a whole energetic or emotional and spiritual component. And we have this whole tradition, a very ancient tradition of using herbs for various things. And so there's wisdom there, traditional wisdom that herbalists tap into. So we're not just looking at research, we're not just looking at, what does the research say about a particular supplement, which is valid and it's a great way to understand and use nutritional supplements. But herbs are different. They really do address the whole person in a much more profound way. And I think it's because they're living beings. And sometimes we forget that. It's not just something in a bottle, it's not just a pill. These are living beings. And, connecting to nature through plants and plant medicine helps you connect back to your source through nature. So I feel like some of the healing that goes on is also spiritual because we're also disconnected. And allows us to reconnect to those things that provide us with strength and wisdom and, resilience. And for me, that has always been nature.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it makes perfect sense. And I'm glad that you said that, that these herbs are living things because, yeah, I think that we do forget that or don't think of it that way. Kind of just sometimes I think they get lumped in just the whole supplement arena and you're not thinking of it from that perspective that it is a living thing. And so it's going to affect the person on a lot of different levels. So this is really super fascinating. We're going to get into a lot more with you, Alison. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will explore more with Alison Birks, certified nutrition specialist and registered clinical herbalist. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. But before we continue, I want to make sure everyone knows how to contact me. You can find me at www.drdianehayden.com or at either of my two publications, www.naturalnutmeg.com and www.essentialnaples.com. And you can learn more about Alison Birks at her website, which is www.alisonbirks.com. That's spelled ALISONBIRKS.com. So before we just went to this break, we were talking about how herbs can be used for grief, which I think is going to be very fascinating for people. It's not something I think that most people would go to think, to think of as something that can help with, sadness or loss or grieving, that kind of thing. And you mentioned rose, which sounds like a great herb, but are there any others that you would suggest for people?
Yeah, there are a number of different herbs. There's two categories that I choose from usually, and one of them are what are called nervines. And these are herbs that strengthen and nourish the nervous system. And we have a lot of them. One of my favorites for grief is called lemon balm or Melissa, and it's in the mint family, and it has a very mild, kind of lemony, minty fragrance. It's known as an uplifting herb, so people take it for depression and for that, feeling of sadness that can happen through the winter time. It's very good for seasonal affective disorder type of depression. Um, and lemon balm gladdens the heart. It makes you feel happier. So using something like a lemon balm tea can be very beneficial. Another herb that I really like to use is borage. And that's, borage is traditionally used for helping to instill courage in people. So there's an old phrase that, I, borage, give thee courage. And I think that sometimes people don't feel courageous when they've lost someone. They feel like they aren't strong. And so
Right.
borage in any form, and it could be in the form of a tea, but also borage flower essence or eating the borage flowers, which are beautiful blue flowers. All of these things can help a person through their grief to feel stronger and able to face what they need to face. Um, and then another thing that I really like to use are herbs that strengthen the endocrine system. So adaptogenic herbs, these are herbs that help us to face stresses of every kind and help our bodies to cope with any type of a stress, whether it be excess exercise or cold or heat intolerance or just stressful life situations. But one of my favorites for people who are rebuilding after grief is American ginseng. And American ginseng, if you're going to use it, I want to make a little caveat. You want to make sure that you're getting what's called woods grown ginseng, not wild crafted, okay? Because there's a lot of ginseng that's over harvested and it's not good for the plant populations. And I want to put a plug in here for an organization called United Plant Savers. And the United Plant Savers' whole mission is to promote the conservation of medicinal plants. And if you're interested in woods grown ginseng, you can order it from Mountain Rose Herbs. They sell it. And also, you can get seeds if you become a member of United Plant Savers, and you can start to grow it on your own land. So woods grown American ginseng strengthens the body, and it gives nourishment, and it gives energy. Something I noticed with my own journey with grief is that you become extremely exhausted. It's a
Mhm.
hard work, right?
Yep.
When you lose someone, your body goes through this transformation and you become very, very depleted and exhausted. And so we would call that adrenal depletion. The adrenals get really uh, whacked through the process. So if you take something like American ginseng, it helps to rebuild that vitality and that energy and gives you the energy to get, back into your routine and things like that. So I just like to look at each individual person and assess whether or not, what is it that they need at that time, what could help them, and which body systems are being most affected. And, there are different models you can use. I like to use the traditional Chinese medicine model because in that model, different organs are associated with different emotions and people grieve differently. Some people get very angry when they lose someone, and others will be very sad, and others will be fearful and anxious. So, those organs are affected by the emotions that you have. And so we would strengthen and support the organs that are connected to those emotions. And so it's a very individualized plan. It's not like herbalism is very individual. We
Yeah.
don't treat disease, we treat people. So we look at each individual and try to assess what can help that person at the moment. And I look at everything. I look at their whole emotional and physical and their nutrition and any underlying illnesses they might have. All of these things play a role in trying to decide which herbs I think would be best for them.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned a couple of the resources. And then I also wanted to point out, I feel like, you know, many people probably have not experimented with herbs because they're not sure, what they should take, how much they should take, that kind of thing. I think they're a little bit more complicated than, most regular supplements where somebody might be just going and getting a multivitamin, or, let's say they're taking magnesium or something like that. That's kind of more, easier in terms of figuring out what your dosage should be for you personally. So, I mean, I always say whenever I have these conversations that you should be working with, a licensed or a trained provider like yourself, because people don't really know what they should be taking. I mean, we can give ideas like what we're doing here, but I think at the end of the day, to really get the most benefits and to be safe about it, you want to work with someone like yourself to do exactly what you just said, like looking at the person as a whole to figure out what they might need. And whereas someone who reacts to grief in one way, like sadness, let's say, versus someone who reacts to grief in another way, anger, you might have two completely different regimens for them, right?
Right, right. And especially, when I look at all the other pieces of information, I mean, I do a whole intake with the person, and I look at their diet, their lifestyle, their behaviors, any illnesses they have, what medications they might be on. I'm happy to speak with people's physicians and, have a dialogue if they're working with me. I can speak their language, so I'm able to communicate with the physician, um, and I'm very knowledgeable about medication and drug interactions with herbs. So all of that needs to be considered. And then there's different ways to use herbs. There's the safest way probably that I can think of are what are called drop doses, and that's more of almost an energetic way of using herbs. It's almost like a homeopathic dose,
Mhm.
where you find the right herb and you just take a couple of drops of it instead of doing a really large dose. So something like grief, it works really well to do drop doses, whereas the more of a physical ailment, let's say you have a cough or you're treating something like that, you're going to be using more physiological doses of herbs. But with something like grief, because it's so energetic and it's so emotional, I find sometimes that the drop doses work just as well, if not better. And that's actually good because they don't interfere with the medications. And I always tell people sometimes you need medication. Medications can be lifesavers for people. Herbs don't really replace medications in many regards. They just, they can be used for people who either don't want to take medication, or if they're not getting the result that they're looking for, but that there is definitely a role for mainstream medication. I'm not opposed to it. I think of myself as integrative and take the best of both worlds, the natural healing world as well as the mainstream allopathic or conventional medicine world. We need a partnership. There are things herbs can do that medications can't, and there are things medications can do that herbs can't.
Right.
So, that's the way I look at it, is that we need to work together with our providers.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So let's talk about some other health issues or just, chronic issues or that people would you consider using herbs for. I know you probably have um definitely recommendations for people who are dealing with, high stress in their life or lack of sleep or stuff like that. And I know, again, we're not going to get into like, a lot of protocol because it's very individualized, but
Right.
just in general, maybe some things for stress or sleep that you would recommend.
Yeah, I mean, stress and sleep are a big component to any health issue that people have. And it's very important that people learn how to manage stress and relax, and that they get enough good sleep. And every illness is made worse by insomnia. So if you're not sleeping, you can't heal That's true. I mean, that's got to be like priority. It's way on the top of the list. So, yes, there are a lot of different herbs you can do. I'm a big fan of using hot baths with some essential oils in the bath. That's one way of using, plant medicines to help you with sleep. Lavender oil is a simple remedy a lot of people find effective, spraying it on your pillow or putting a couple drops in the bathtub. I like passion flower. Passion flower extract is very calming and helps people to fall asleep. The old standby chamomile, we all know chamomile tea. That's a very good one, but we forget about how powerful it really is sometimes. And also hops. Hops is a plant that is calming and relaxing and can help with sleep. So those are a few of the herbs that I like. But again, I would tailor that to the individual and what they need. But nothing replaces relaxing your mind, so you need some kind of outlet, whether it's yoga, meditation, exercise, something. You can't substitute herbs for those behaviors. It enhances what you're already doing, but you need to have some type of way of calming your nervous system.
Right, exactly. Yeah, for sure. And it's all complementary things. I mean, obviously, the same thing with supplements. I mean, you can take great supplements, you can eat really healthy, but at the end of the day, if you're not sleeping, if you're not doing things for stress reduction, like you mentioned, yoga or meditation, I mean, all of these things are not going to replace, you know, doing those kinds of things to reduce the stress in your life. I mean, there are definitely, like you're saying, herbs and supplements that can help with that, but you have to be doing other things as well to reduce it, to calm your mind, to allow the body time to just, rest and heal and all of that. So great suggestions. I'm excited to learn more. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking more with Alison Birks. She's a certified nutrition specialist and registered clinical herbalist. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden, and I'm talking today with Alison Birks. You can learn more about her at www.alisonbirks.com. That's spelled ALISONBIRKS.com. And we are talking about all things herbs and how to use them for lots of different situations. Specifically, Alison is very educated and knowledgeable about using herbs for grief. We've talked a little bit about using them for stress or sleep. And you mentioned something just in us, when we were talking offline about the energetics of herbs. So I'm really curious, what does that mean?
Yeah, that's a really big topic and one that's hard to put into a few words. But basically, all of the traditional systems of healing around the world, starting with Ayurveda, which is the mother of all medicine from India, as well as traditional Chinese medicine and some of the, indigenous systems of healing, all perceive of herbs as having a quality beyond just, what does it do? But like, for example, you can have two herbs that do similar things, and one would be more heating and the other more cooling. And you can find the energetics of an herb through looking at its taste. So it's sort of intuitive. If you think about something like ginger or cinnamon bark,
Like spicy.
it's spicy,
Yeah.
right? So, and it's warming. It makes you feel
Yeah.
warm when you have a ginger tea or eat some ginger. Whereas there are other herbs that are bitter and they're more cooling to the body and they don't have that same pungent flavor. So flavor is an indicator of the energy of an herb. And in herbal medicine, what we do is we use the opposite. So if someone is showing a presentation of heat in their body, that let's say they're hot, they're having a lot of fevers, or they have a type of a condition that we would call a hot condition, we would use cooling herbs to balance that. And one way you can visualize this is a sunburn. So a sunburn is a hot condition. It's caused by the sun, it causes pain and inflammation and redness and swelling. And the herbs that we use to cool that, something like aloe vera gel, which is a liquidy, cool, you put that on there, it takes the heat away, it takes the inflammation away. So all herbs have an energetic, and we want to find the right match between the condition of the person and the energy of the plant. And they work as opposites. So that's the key way we understand energetics. Some people have other ways of understanding what energetics means. But that's how I understand it. And that's how, that's my way of understanding, what does that word mean? There's a lot, it means a lot of things to a lot of different herbalists and a lot of different people. And I don't think there's any like 100% agreement on it either. It's kind of one of those, everyone has their own theory on
Yeah.
what are energetics and what does it mean and all of that.
I mean, to me, it's just the energy of the plant, right? Like the life force of what that plant is. And
Yeah.
like you're saying, matching it. It's interesting to me when you said that, my mind went to, oh, interesting with herbs, you're looking for the opposite effect. Whereas my understanding of homeopathy is treat like with like, or I forget how it's said, right?
Like
Yeah.
cures like, yeah.
Like cures like, yep.
Yeah, and it's a little different with homeopathy because there's a different philosophy of how things work in the body. But with classical herbalism, we're using the opposites. So
Yes.
because it's really working on a very physiological level. And the other way that we can look at herbs energetically is are they stimulating or sedating to various body systems?
Mhm.
So, we might say that one herb is stimulating to the endocrine system, but it's calming and relaxing to the nervous system. It's calming to the digestive system. Maybe it's stimulating to the skin or to the lymphatic system. So there's this idea of stimulate and sedate, and that's a pair of opposites. So, in Chinese medicine, they look at opposites like heat and cold and damp and dry, and those are pairs of opposites. There's a lot of different understanding of, what these energetics mean, how to categorize herbs, and there's a lot of debate within the herbal community of how we're gonna identify, the energetics of a plant. But I do think the understanding the flavor part of it is a big part.
Yeah. And it's funny, I'm sitting here on my lanai and I literally have a basil plant and a spearmint plant in front of me. And I'm looking at them. And as we're having this conversation, this is what pops into my head. I'm like, is there a difference or a reason? I'm sure the answer is yes to this, but I'm curious. Like, why would you want to use an herb that is, let's say, live versus one that's dried?
Oh, that's a great question. Everyone has their own opinion on this too. But living plants, if you're using fresh material, one thing is you need to use more of it. Okay, it's kind of counterintuitive, but when you dry it, you're concentrating all the medicine into a smaller amount. So you need more if it's fresh. The fresh has, additional factors that maybe when you dry the plant, you don't get. They're just not present. But there's also certain dried plants that have things that have evolved, constituents that come out after drying. So you have to know each individual plant. But dried basil and fresh basil, for example, taste totally different, right? They don't really taste the same at all. And they have different profiles, different constituents in them. So, there's no rules. It's kind of like knowing the plant. Some things are better fresh and some things are better dry. For example, there's an herb called chickweed. It's a little plant that is a nourishing nervine and nutritive, and it's really cooling and moistening, and it's great for inflammation, things like that. But it's best fresh. It's best if you use it fresh or you eat it fresh. Once you dry it, it loses almost all of its potency. So that's an example where, you really need to use the fresh herb over the dried. So yeah, you just have to know your plants. You just have to know what they're like when they're dried versus fresh, and when you would use each one.
Right. Yeah. Kind of along the same lines we were talking about, how do you know what are the right herbs to choose? Like, where would someone even start with that?
Yeah, I mean, how would they start? I don't know. I always tell my students, you learn one plant at a time. Maybe something you like, you're attracted to it, you like the flavor of it, or the look of it, or you're growing it, or maybe you'd heard about it. And you want to experience it in different states. You want to maybe try it fresh, try it dried, make different things with it. Try it topically as well as internally. Read everything you can about it. And then you really want to listen to your own body, your own experience, and see, what does your experience tell you about that plant? Because everyone connects to plants in different ways. Some people even connect to them through dreams. I've had many situations where I've dreamed of particular plants, and that's like their way of getting my attention. So, we can connect to plants in different ways, and it's great to just learn one at a time, spend a lot of time learning that one plant, and have a very intimate relationship with it. Think of it as another living being. You get to know, how do you get to know a friend, right? It's a little at a time, slowly, and you build on what you know, and over time you develop a friendship. So it's like that with plants. You develop a friendship and a trust over time. And the more you use plant medicines and the more you experience them, you start to trust it. You build a sort of inner trust and an inner knowing. And there's a knowledge base that gets built up within your own body. So once you've tasted them and eaten them and grown them, seen them in different seasons, drawn pictures of them, take photos of them, all of that stuff, sit outside, meditate next to them, whatever activities you do, you're building a friendship, so
Yeah.
that's how I think of it. You're building a friendship.
It's interesting you say that. And what I'm thinking when you're saying that and I don't even, this thought like never really occurred to me before, but why is it that we have certain preferences? Like, I can tell you that I love basil. I love, spearmint. There's certain herbs that I absolutely love. And there's other ones that I cannot stand. Like, I can't stand thyme for whatever reason. I don't like the smell of it. I don't like the taste of it. I can pick it out if it's in like some dish or whatever. I don't like fennel either. And I'm like, I wonder why that is. Like, why do I have like sort of, just a distaste, I guess, for certain herbs, and what does that mean?
I don't know. I think that could be answered in a lot of ways. Some people might say, well, certain plants are calling to you and others aren't. It could be physiological, genetic, like I know with cilantro, they found there's actually a gene for people who are super tasters and they don't like the taste of cilantro.
That's a
Um,
great one because I love cilantro, and there's so many people that don't like cilantro. I'm like, what are you, crazy? Like, who doesn't like
Yeah.
cilantro?
Yeah, and then and it's interesting is there's also your perception. So even if I personally I did the test and found I am one of the people that is supposed to not like it, and I actually really like that taste
Wow,
because
that's
it
interesting.
it tastes
Yeah.
soapy, but I like it. So there's a perception. So there's the cultural aspect of why you like certain things. Was it cooked for you as a child? Like how many exposures did you have to it as a child? That makes a difference in what foods and tastes you like. Maybe ethnicity and culture, and were you raised with a certain cuisine style? And then we have associations with different flavors based on our childhood or emotional memories, things like that. So yeah, there's a lot to why. Is there an inner knowing and an inner wisdom about what's good for us? Maybe. I mean, animals have that. There are animals that have actually been found to use herbs therapeutically. And there's a whole science behind watching what do the animals seek out and how do they use herbal medicine. And so that's fascinating. Bears especially are known to dig up different roots, and there are root medicines called bear medicines because we've watched how do the bears use those medicines and learned from them. So there's a lot to it.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting what you said about animals because I think I've watched some of these shows. I think I can't remember now what they were, but yeah, where the animals would go and chew on something, let's say, or it's interesting. I think like if even your domesticated pet will go out and eat grass, and usually it's because their stomach is upset or something. And I don't know if, I feel like a lot like vets or other people have said, oh, don't let your animal eat grass or whatever. But I'm wondering, why are they doing that? Right?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that animals have inner knowing or instinct about what to eat. I think people do too. It's just that there are so many other things that have clouded that lens of, because it's so fundamental to who we are, and there's so many factors. But there's definitely somewhere there is an instinct for what's good for us, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think, we just need to get to a place where we trust these instincts more, we listen to our intuition more, and you know, it helps us, I think, not only get closer to nature, but also understand our own bodies more as well and know how to, take care of ourselves and heal ourselves. So we're going to be getting into a lot more with you. This is totally fascinating to me. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be talking more with Alison Birks. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. You can learn more about me at www.drdianehayden.com. And I am talking today with Alison Birks, and you can learn more about her at www.alisonbirks.com. That's spelled ALISONBIRKS.com. So before we finish up for today, I want to make sure people know how they can basically work with you, Alison. Like when they come to work with you, what can people expect? Do they have to see you in person? Can it be done virtually? So just tell us a little bit about how your practice works.
So right now I'm working virtually. And what I do is, a lot of my clients will come to me just looking for some nutrition counseling. But the ones who, are open to using herbs and some of these other things, usually will on an initial meet and greet call. I do like a 10-minute free call. And, on my website, there's a Calendly link. You can set that up and we'll just talk about like, what are you looking for? So I try to meet people where they're at. My practice can be a variety of different things, anything from nutrition to the herbal things I spoke of earlier, to just some grief counseling. Each person has different needs, and some of these things cross over. So I start with a meet and greet call. We see if we're a good fit. If not, then I may refer the person to go somewhere else that, where they can get better help than I'm able to provide them. They have an intake form that they fill out, a history, health history. I'll look at their diet, their lifestyle, their stress, their sleep, exercise, what they're eating. And then I ask a lot of questions about their symptoms and their health history and what they're going through and what their current need is. And so I review that. I also look at labs. I look at blood work. I look at recent medical tests, anything like that they want to share. I'm happy to look through all of that. And I have them do a diet history that I also look at. And then in our conversation, we do interactive calls and virtual Zoom type thing. And I ask a lot of questions, and I try to help the person to see patterns or to see what areas of the body need more support. And then we focus in on, out of all of the information that I have, I try to prioritize, well, what's most important? Where do we start? And we don't look at everything all at once, but we'll pick 2 or 3 things to work on together. And then I also try to take in consideration, what does someone want to do? And not everyone wants to drink tea. Some people want to take tinctures, some people want supplements, some people don't want any of that. They just want food. And some people just need a supportive ear, someone to listen to them. A lot of grief counseling is just being present and just being aware and being supportive, and hearing the person. And, I have my own personal journey through grief. And because of my own personal experience, I can really hold that space and just let a person be in grief with no judgment, and just, whatever they need to say, they can say. And I also can tell like what stage of their journey they're at. There are stages, and kind of being aware of how is a person processing through that. Um, where are they in their grief? One of the first things I might do is I'll have people do a map of all the griefs that they've ever had. And so we look back in time and we say, okay, what was the first loss you ever had? And then go forward to the present time. And we look at that like a map of their grief. And so, there's David Kessler, who was my grief educator teacher, says that every grief in the moment takes on all the past history of all the other griefs. And if they're unresolved, those traumas get carried forward into the current grief. And so, which things need attending to, which griefs are resolved and you've moved forward with them. You don't move on. You never really, when you lose someone you love, you don't ever 100% move on. You move forward.
Right.
So that's what people need to remember, is that, grief is a normal, natural part of the human experience. It's the opposite of love. When we love someone deeply, we're going to grieve and be sad when they are gone. And so the more you loved someone, the deeper the grief is going to be. And so, we need to normalize it in our culture, that it needs time, it needs space. You have to give grief space, and you can't rush it. And it's not like, okay, it's been 6 weeks, get up and get on with it and get back to your job. And that's not how it works. People don't understand that unless they've been through it, that, it takes as long as it takes. It has its own time. And
And everyone's different. And I'm
and
so
everyone is different.
glad we're saying this now. I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this could be a whole nother podcast, honestly, because I feel like our society is so quick to just like, sweep it under the rug or whatever, and kind of just be like you said, okay, time to move on, time to get back to your job, time to get back into life and whatever. But and for some people, I think they can move through the grieving process a little bit more easily, I guess, if that's, the word for them, maybe, or quicker, let's say. And other people, it's going to take a lot more time, and it's not going to be
Yeah,
easy or, pretty. And like, like I said, I think like we're just, where you said it, we're really not equipped as a society to handle it. Like people either don't know what to say to each other. People are embarrassed to go seek help for it, or they feel like if it takes too long or longer than what's expected, whatever that is, that there's something wrong with them. And none of that's true. What you're
right.
saying is, I think what you do is amazing, and there needs to be more people like you doing this, because I don't think there are many people who are really true grief counselors. So,
Yeah,
and putting it
yeah.
out there.
Yeah, and for me, this was a more recent part of my practice than something I want to focus on, just because of my own experience and what I've been able to witness. And so, I've always been good at holding space for people, for their pain, for their process, wherever they're at. And, when you go to see a practitioner, you're the one doing the healing. I'm not. I'm just holding space for you so that you can do the healing. So I think a good practitioner is just able to hold a compassion and a place of knowing. And so I bring that to what I do. And then I also understand, what does grief do to the body? And it's very depleting. So we do use herbs and nutrition and all of those tools to build the person up so that they've just, have more physical stamina and feel better and can move forward. So I definitely look at it as a whole holistic approach to helping people with their healing.
Yeah, I love it. And like I said, this could be a whole nother show,
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about, and so many people need help, especially at this time, for sure. And just to know that there's someone like you who's out there doing this is fantastic. I mean, I have people in my head already that I'm going to refer to you, because I think they really need what you're doing on many different levels, whether it's just to talk to you or to get herbs or, recommendations, that kind of thing. So I want to thank you so much, Alison, for being with us. This was fantastic. And I want to thank all of you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show. Please join me the first and third Thursdays at 11 Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Have a great week, and I'll see you back here next time.
Thanks, Diane.
Thank you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show, revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Tune in every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com. Center your thoughts on what you want and shut the door on every suggestion of fear, worry, or lack from your own consciousness or the consciousness around you. Once you master that, everything is possible. To learn more about me, Dr. Diane, and receive a free digital subscription of my magazine, visit naturalnutmeg.com.